Good afternoon, everyone. All right, so I'm here to talk about parenting in the age of AI, and Les actually asked me, did I use any AI to make these slides? Right? I'll never confirm nor deny, but AI was used in the production of this presentation. I do think this is a presentation that is important in the generation that we're in today. I think last year we spent quite a lot of time talking about the digital age, and I do think it has evolved over the past few years. So here we go. I would like to start off with a scripture. Proverbs 24, verse 3 says, "By wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established." So we're trusting God in these sessions that we've had, not just for information, but for transformation. So we can actually take this, use it, and allow God to do what He needs to do in our children's lives, but also in ours. I do think this is a topic that doesn't just impact our kids, it also impacts us as adults, because this whole new AI revolution is changing our understanding of how the ordinary works today as well. So, I think one thing is clear, that change is arguably the only constant that exists in all of history. From back in the day when we used to use carriage rides with horses to get around, all the way to when, who's this, Mr. Benz created the very first car, and when Henry Ford then put that on an assembly line. I think as the industrial shifts have happened over the years, there's one thing that has been clear, that there's always been some sense of, I want to say, pushback to the change, right? And AI is no different. If we go all the way back to 1886, when calculators became mainstream, the math teachers hit the streets and they said, no, it cannot be, right? You're going to make our children a little less smarter. And I think we can all argue here that was partially true, right? It was partially true. Not all of us can do the math the way we used to, but it wasn't all bad. There was a lot of value that came from having calculators, but there was a pushback to that technology. And then in 1925, the TV was made mainstream. And a lot of the feedback that we got was what? The devil's box. Right? This devil's box. How are they fitting all those little tiny people in that box? There's something wrong that is going on here. Again, there was pushback. But we cannot argue the value that the television has brought to this world, both good and bad. All right? Today we watch sermons on TV. We're able to grow our faith on TV, right? And then in 1989 to 1991, arguably one of the most important inventions in all of human history, the internet. Right? The internet has revolutionized the way everything works. Literally to the point of how you work today. When you open up your laptop and you open Teams, or when you do research, or when you figure out where you're going to get food, or when you Uber Eats, it all comes down to this internet. And with the internet, we can argue there has been a great amount of value that has been created, connecting the world. Many of us a few years ago, had it not been for the internet, we wouldn't even know how the Golden Gate Bridge looks like. We wouldn't know how the rest of the world looks like. So it has been a window into a whole new world. But it has also brought a lot of bad things, right? And then we go to the 2000s, the birth of the modern day social media craze. Facebook, back then it was MySpace, and all sorts of random social media platforms. Again, fundamentally changing the way we interacted as people, changing how we communicate, right? Changing how we get to know each other. Before, if you really wanted to like someone's picture, they had to invite you to their house. You had to find the picture on the wall, and you had to tell them, I like this picture. Right? Now, all you have to do is go onto these platforms, whether you like it or not. You just click like, scroll, right? So there has been a fundamental shift. Lots of good, right? For businesses, different ways to advertise, and not so good for our kids, creating isolation and all sorts of things, and sexual grooming over these platforms. It hasn't been all good. And then 2022, it all changed once again. And this time, we're not quite sure how it's going to play out. And this is what we're here to talk about today: the age of AI. And how do we parent in this age of AI? Right? 2022 gave birth to generative AI, the current form of AI that we know. So we can arguably all agree that there is both good and bad with every shift that happens throughout history. We get a lot of benefit, and there's also dangers that come with it. So wisdom tells us that it's not just about accepting the good, or it's not just about rejecting everything that's bad and saying, you know what, forget about it, AI, just throw it away. That's not how we should approach this. There needs to be I want to call it a healthy respect for what the future looks like and how we tackle that. So, before we get into it, I want to take some time to just unpack what this AI thing is that everyone keeps talking about. We've read about it, we've even played around with it on ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it is, but let's just unpack it a bit more. And I'm hoping after this, you're going to have a much better understanding of what your children are actually being exposed to and how much trust we need to put into these tools. So, the first thing, AI is not new. The form of AI that we're aware of, that's new. But AI in itself is not new, right? For those of us who have phones, whether it's an iPhone or Samsung, it doesn't really matter. You would have noticed many years before ChatGPT, you'd open up your phone and you'll see it'll have little blockies around the people's faces. And it'll be able to tell you, these are all the pictures of your mom. These are all the pictures of your dad. These are all the pictures of this person, right? It was able to use that information, use AI to what? Cluster these pictures for you into groups, right? For those of us who are very accustomed to YouTube, which has been around for many years as well, you would have seen that it's able to recommend, after you watch 2 or 3 videos about making cupcakes, then the next 16 to 25 videos are about making what? Cupcakes, right? It's able to determine and discern, this person likes making cupcakes. So let me feed them more the content about what? About cupcakes. I mean, for those of us that don't even know about it, in research, banking, medicine, all these industries have been using AI for years to do a number of things. The difference with what happened in 2023 is that 2022 is that it became mainstream, right? But before we even get to that, this is just a representation of what AI actually is. So we keep on saying AI, AI, but we are using a very small subset of what the definition of AI is. And those are the large language models. That is simply basically just what? A set of data that has been pulled together that we are able to what? Engage with. And that is what shifted in 2022. We came to a whole new frontier of how we engage with our data. So generative AI, or matter of fact, let's call it that. The AI that we know today, we refer to as generative AI, meaning that we're able to what? Engage with it, chat with it, and it's able to give us a what? Give us a response. Before we knew AI as some form of hocus, whatever it is, weird things that happens in the background. No one knows about it. It just does what it needs to do. But the AI we engage with today, so ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, all of that, Copilot at work, it is just a data set that has been consolidated that we can now engage with, right? At the back, underneath all of that, is just the what? A bunch of data. So if I explain it simply, someone went out, gathered all the data you can imagine, videos, blogs, music, all of it, consolidated it into what? A structure. And they call that structure a large language model. What we're able then to do is talk to all of that information, and it's able to give us what? Feedback. Now, this is where things get interesting, and this is where I want you to pay very close attention. AI is a statistical model. I'll say that again. AI, the way we know it today, is a statistical model. What does that mean? It means it does not necessarily understand what you're asking it. It is just predicting what the answer could be. Right? So you have this large set of data that we have given it, telling it everything we possibly know. It then takes the question we ask, it runs through the data and says, what is most likely to be what? The next word, given this context that this person has given me. So let's take an example here. You asked AI, what is the capital of Japan? It goes into the model and it looks for what? Patterns. It looks for capital and it looks for Japan, right? It then starts to run through a bunch of algorithms and blah, 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 all the nice things that the techies will tell you. And it determines statistically the capital of Japan is what? Tokyo. Because in all the information that I have, when I have those two things together, typically what I'm getting back is what? Tokyo. So then it then responds to you and says, the capital of Japan is Tokyo. And you're like, whoa, this thing is smart, right? If I'm to make it as practical as possible, think of talking to AI like talking to an Excel sheet. So go home, open Microsoft Excel and start talking to it. That is what talking to AI feels like. That is exactly what it is. It's just talking to ones and zeros that have a lot of very smart things behind it to help you predict what the potential answer could be, right? Now, this is where things get very dangerous, specifically for our kids. And I want to make it clear that AI does not feel. It does not have an emotion behind it. It does not have a heart. We just established now that it is a what? Ones and zeros, a statistical model, right? It does not care. I think more important here is to understand that these models are not created, they don't just fall out of the sky. They're made by companies who have a mandate to make what? Money, right? So you have a practical yes man or yes woman that you're exposing to yourself and to your kids. So it's never going to push back in a way that's going to want you to walk away. It's always going to tell you what you want to hear and how you want to hear it. Why? Because it does not have a desire to push back, because that means you're going to stop using it, company stops making money. It has no emotion and it has no spirit. Again, all it's doing is just using math to determine what the potential next word would be based on what you've asked it. All right? So we just want to make sure we understand what our kids are engaging with, because we're seeing a lot of our young people finding relationships, finding very deep emotional dependence with AI. And now we have a practical view of what it is that they're forming relationships with, right? Okay. So the other thing that I found quite interesting, going back to what we just said now, AI is basically what? A statistical model. And I keep saying that because I want it to land. It goes through this data, identifies what could potentially be the next answer, and then it responds. And that's where these hallucinations come from. Why? Because an AI is only as good as the what? The data you give it. Right? It is only as good as the data that you give it. So if your data is not robust, what do you end up with? Nonsense. When I was in varsity, a lecturer used to tell us, rubbish in, rubbish out, right? Rubbish in, rubbish out. And that is essentially what it works. So how it works. So essentially you ask this AI, for example, I think a few years back, if it's not a year back, someone asked, I think Google got into some trouble because someone asked one of their models, how many rocks should I eat to maintain a good, healthy, balanced diet? And then it responded, 2 to 3 rocks a day should keep you very healthy. And people lost it. And they were like, how is it possible that this da-da-da-da, blah, 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 it doesn't make any sense. But realistically, it was doing exactly what it was designed. The question of eating a rock is not something that humans talk about, right? It's not something that we commonly talk about, eating rocks. So when it went through its data set to determine how many rocks should a human eat, it couldn't find anything apart from a random forum talking, like random people talking about eating rocks. So it took that information and said, well, this is all I have. So let me just extrapolate and say, well, 2 sounds about good. And that's what it gave back. And the danger of this is obviously it's very confident in how it responds. It feels and it looks correct. So we just accept it and we take it. And this can be dangerous, obviously. What? Considering that we take health advice. from this AI, right? We take learning advice from these AIs. In the age of Google, we at least had the ability to choose which links we want to click on. But now it just gives you the answer. Whether or not it has accurately cited the websites that it said it looked into, no one knows, right? And I want to make it clear, I'm not here to bash AI and tell you that it is the worst thing since, I don't know, God knows what. We just need to be practical about the realities of what this is, all right? It has both good and it has bad. So I just wanted to give you an idea of what it is that we're actually talking about when we say generative AI or AI. So now let's get into some of the opportunities and the dangers. Starting off with the opportunities. Now, I believe AI is a tool. It is a tool, and we'll talk about that a bit more, but it has the ability to do things that you could not have imagined, and it excites me every time I start to talk about it, right? It has the ability to improve how we learn. It has the ability to increase our productivity, make us do things better, quicker, more efficiently, help us solve problems faster, unlock creativity, lower barriers of entry. A few years ago, I couldn't have imagined being able to code something. I still can't code anything. But you know what? Today, I can have an idea. I open an AI app and I can visually see what that idea looks like. Today, I can have a picture in my head. I can open an AI app and I can show others what I'm seeing to a certain degree of accuracy. That is crazy, right? It allows us to innovate. You have something you can engage with, probe your thinking sometimes. Think of new ways to do things. That is a lot of value, right? I mean, for those of us who know Khan Academy has probably seen most of us through varsity and high school, right? Explaining mathematical concepts, history, and all of that. They now have created a chatbot that allows you to engage and walks you through the process. So you can actually talk to the problems. For those of us who haven't been in high school for many, many years and have to help our kids with homework, and you have to remember what trigonometry is, right? You have someone you can quickly just ask and say, hey, what is trigonometry again? What do I need to do to get there? And it can just help jumpstart the process again and get you going. So there's a lot of value, right? For the moms that come home when you're tired and you open the fridge and you're like, where do I start? Like, where do I start? There's only so many ways you can cook chicken, right? So it has the ability to help you minimize the fuss. Say, these are the ingredients that I have. What can I make? Give me an idea. And boom, 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 there you go. All right? So there's so many opportunities that it creates. One of my favorite is a man named Paul Cunningham and his dog Rosie. So Paul had a problem, or he had a problem, and this is a true story. So his dog contracted cancer. He went to the vet, and the vet told him that the cancer was incurable. Unfortunately, he had to make do with the fact that his dog was going to die. Obviously, Paul had a very deep relationship, or has a deep relationship with his dog. So he decided to figure out how he can remedy that. So he paid some money, went to university, and got them to synthesize his dog's DNA. I might be butchering it now, but he got a way for them to extract his dog's DNA and give it to him in data that he can use. He went home, opened up his ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude, and started chatting with these AIs to understand how he can help his dog. Fast forward a few months later, he was able to determine where the exact issue was based on the DNA data that they gave him. He took it back to the university and they synthesized a vaccine for his dog. A few months later, the tumor started to shrink. Now, I just want to make it clear here that Paul is not a doctor. Paul is not a vet. Paul is just a guy who loves his dog. That's it. And he was able, with the power of AI, to start creating specialized treatments for his dog to shrink the cancer. And that is insane. That is insane. If there ever was a use case for AI, that is one, right? So the value, we're not here to argue the value of AI, right? It's insane. But we also have to be realistic about what it introduces. One of the things that I found very interesting, typically with our children, that are already struggling with identity and image distortion issues is what this generation of AI means for that. Having worked with teenagers for a very long time, one of the things that we address very strongly is what? Identity. Do you know who you are? Do you know who God says you are? Right? And they struggle with that. And before we were competing and fighting with the idea of social media changing and impacting what our kids thought about themselves. And this is just people applying filters. Now we have companies of people creating fictional characters that don't even exist, creating social media profiles for them, and then selling supplements for our kids to take. These synthesized things with perfect faces, with perfect skin tones, with the perfect hair, and everything just looks right, creating this distorted image of who our kids should be. And given, unfortunately, that most of them spend their time scrolling through this content, assuming, oh wow, when am I going to look like that? Talk about unrealistic expectations. This is literally, it's non-existent expectations that we're putting on our kids. So let's do a quick exercise. Let's see how many of us can actually spot when something is AI or it isn't, because this is what our kids contend with every single day when they're scrolling through their phones. So looking at that picture, A or B, who thinks A is the real one? Okay, who thinks B is the real one? And everyone else is just not sure, right? I can tell you that B is the real image. Let's try another one. Which of those is the real one? Is it A or B? Who says A is the real one? Who says B is the real one? Correct. B is the real one. Let's try the last one now. Which of these people are AI? Who says the first one to the right at the top? Anyone want to point out which one is AI? Well, I can perhaps help you there. They are all AI. Every single last one of them is an AI image. Right? So you can clearly see the advancements that have been made in this technology in such a short period of time. I almost fell off my seat when I saw this. I couldn't believe it. So it's getting harder and harder for our kids to identify as they go through this whole new generation of, I don't know, information. What is real and what isn't? I mean, the stories that are coming out now, and I've done my best to go and find actual articles of what's actually happening. So this is a story, and this is just one simple example of a young lady who basically got an emotional attachment to an AI, and she went as far as getting married to said AI. She had VR glasses and everything, and they exchanged rings, and I believe, yeah, it was accepted as an actual marriage, right? But it is such an interesting thing to witness, because she most likely built an emotional what? Connection to this thing. And it's the way we're interfacing with it makes it interesting. Why? Because we chat to it. You talk to it. It responds, and it responds in such a natural way that you can't deny that there must be a person behind there. It's even gone as far now that these models have voices behind them. That you can actually talk and it responds in a voice that sounds natural. They've gotten to a point where they even started to add breaths in between when this AI talks to you. So it feels like a human that is talking to you, because it takes time to breathe, inhale and exhale. It giggles. So the lines have become extremely blurred in terms of what is real and what isn't. The other thing that's quite interesting is the type of information. Now, let's quickly go back to what we spoke about around the data that makes the AI. We've established that there are companies behind these models, and each company has a data set, and they determine how they build the data set. A few years ago, there was an issue with Grok, where they had, I think, made it a little too liberal, right? And Elon Musk had to come and pull it back, right? So they have the power to tweak and determine what these models can and cannot give out. And at the end of the day, when we know that this is a business, their priority is to ensure what? That they make money off of this. So the intention is to ensure that they keep you on these things, talking and engaging and chatting with them. So it's always going to tell you what you want to hear, whether it's good or bad, to a point where we have scenarios where these things have led people to committing suicide because it just keeps feeding whatever you ask it as far as it possibly can. Now, I want to be fair to these companies because they're doing a lot of good work to try and stop that. But there have been multiple articles where they have even spoken and said themselves that these models are doing things that they didn't even think they could do. They're doing things that they didn't build them to do, right? So we have to be aware that this information that we typically get out can be biased because these models are made of what? Both the good and the bad that this world has to offer. So the exposure that our kids get to this information, we can't control how the AI is going to respond, right? And then I think Pastor Harry did a very good job at talking about child grooming, right? What's interesting here is that a few years, well, I want to say 3 years ago, actually, when someone wanted to build a profile on a child to try figure out how to chat to them or whatever it is and figure out their interest, they had to spend time, scroll through their social media, dig through their stuff. But today, I just write a single prompt. I put the social media link in there and it spits out everything about them. Builds a shadow profile I can use. And then it even tells me how I can initiate the conversation, how I can respond. So it's become a lot easier for child groomers to get access to our kids, how they think, and a whole bunch of other things in between. Right? So we have to be aware and awake. The other thing as well is we know, I think when this whole journey started, everyone had assumed that AI will probably come in and maybe impact some of the industries. Raising kids today in a world where we're not even sure what the future looks like, what jobs should we be preparing them for? It's very difficult to determine what that is. We don't know what the next 5 years are going to look like. We don't know how AI is going to impact. We know for the fact that it's having a fundamental impact across all industries. But we're still waiting for all of it to settle so we know what kind of work is expected of our kids and we know what we should be investing into, right? I found this quote and I found it quite interesting. It says, I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do art and writing, not for AI to do my art and writing so that I can do laundry and my dishes. Right? Because we've at some point thought that art and creativity is the one thing that AI can never touch. And here we are. AI is making music, it's drawing pictures, it's animating, it's doing all sorts of things, right? So being intentional how we engage with our kids and what they should be looking at and how they should be, what skills they should be developing is quite interesting. And one of the things that I've found to be quite unique about what AI has done is what? It is taking away the ability for us to think for ourselves. It is taking away the ability for our kids to think for ourselves. Back in the day, they'll tell you, go home and write an essay about Jan van Riebeeck. You had to go find out who Jan was. Where did he live? What did he do? And you had to then figure out and actually write it out. Even if you Googled it, you still get a bunch of links and you have to go read each one and tell me who Jan was. And then you actually write something. Today, I just ask, who is Jan? And there's the essay. This is Jan. There's something that we lost. I mean, by bypassing the struggle, we remove the friction that is necessary, to develop our thinking. Before you had to engage with the struggle, you fight with it a little bit. And that process of engaging and fighting, it builds your ability to understand. It teaches you how to search out information. It teaches you how to discern good from bad. It teaches you how to get to the right piece of information. Now we're outsourcing that. to a machine. And this is what we need to protect in our kids more than anything. Moses Pastor Belinda told us a story about one of our neighbors who has a little boy. And every day after school, when the little boy comes home, she sends him outside and she sits by the door. She tells him, go play. Go play. Go eat some dirt. Go build your immune system. And then after that, you can come inside. Because otherwise, you what? Just sit inside and watch TV all day. So she was intentional about ensuring that the child gets the right level of what? Exposure and stimulation, be it outside or inside the house. So this requires an intentional approach from all of us to ensure that our kids still go through the process of thinking for themselves, allowing independent thought, so that you don't have to pull out your phone every time you have a question. Right? Someone said it so well, a brain is a muscle, use it or lose it. And this isn't just true for our kids, it's true for us as well. Some of the more common things that I'm starting to see as I start to use AI more and more, for example, is how horrendous my spelling is getting. Because I'm not typing out the words anymore. All right? I'm just telling this thing, hey, I need 1, 2, 3. I don't even care how I spell anymore. It just figures it out. Some of my words don't even make sense. It just figures out kind of what I'm trying to say, and then it gives me the answer and I move on. Right? So there's an intentional piece to ensuring that we don't lose that critical thinking. So I want to close this piece off specifically with a simple illustration. Consider a knife. All of us have used a knife before, right? Right? You've all engaged with a knife at some point. A knife has one purpose, and that is to cut. It has one distinct purpose, is to cut. It can be used by chefs. It can be used by, adventurers in the bushes somewhere. It can be used by even you and I while we're eating food, right? At the end of the day, it does one thing. It cuts. What makes the difference is who's using it. The user determines what the knife cuts, right? In some cases, it can even do sinister things. At the end of the day, what matters is the person who's holding the handle. And that is true for AI as well. It is a tool. Just as social media is a tool, what matters is who is holding the handle and what are we doing with it. And most of our kids is what are we doing to ensure that we're creating an environment that is safe for them. So the goal should not be to reject AI, and it should not be to blindly accept it. The goal is discernment. Right? It's discernment. There should be an excitement, a healthy excitement about what this means for our future, but also a healthy skepticism of what it could be. It's a balance of the two. Right? So how should we respond? And I have about 10 minutes, but we're going to get there. Number one, I think someone said it in the last session. Ignorance is not bliss, as far as I'm concerned. They say what you do not know will not hurt you. But if you're standing on a road and a truck is going to come and hit you, it will not hurt you. It will kill you. All right? So hypothetically, what you do not know can hurt you. So number one, you cannot explain what you do not understand. As parents, the first thing we need to do is understand what this AI thing is. We need to understand AI for ourselves. And the nice thing about this, I want to call it shift in the industry, is that it doesn't just affect our kids, it affects us as well. It affects how you work. It affects you at your workplace. It affects the potential future you have in your own personal career. So the question is, do you understand it well enough to help inform your child? Have you taken the time to understand which of these apps should my child be using? Maybe it's not a good idea that I expose them to all of these image generation apps, because maybe it's giving them the wrong sense of who they are. Maybe it's disturbing the identity that they have, or the image that they have of themselves. Of these random models that keep coming out, which of them should they be exposed to? What are the kind of things that these models can give back when I ask them? What are the dangers that they should be aware of? Based on your own experience. So good advice is to use it yourself. It is useful. It's not a waste of time. It is useful and it can add value to you as well. So getting an understanding of it is probably a good place to start. Number two, we need to set healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries. And this is an important one. You're dealing with a data machine. Some of the things that people don't necessarily understand is what you feed this thing doesn't just hit your keyboard and it dies there. They take that information and they use that information to what? To train their model yet again. Problem is that our kids don't know that I shouldn't be putting my ID number into this thing. I shouldn't be putting my home address into this thing. I shouldn't be putting my personal pictures into this thing. Right? We need to ensure that our kids understand what we should be putting into this system and what we shouldn't. But I think more importantly, and I think it has been discussed in all the other sessions, is what are the things that our children should be asking these AI models versus what they should be coming to us as parents to get an answer to. So we should be able to tell them that you shouldn't be asking this AI about personal questions. You shouldn't be asking this AI about questions that we should be talking about. Ask it about your homework. Ask it who John Cena is by all means. But don't ask it personal questions that determine who you are as a person. Don't ask it identity defining questions and then take that as the reality. Because now that we have an understanding that we're talking to ones and zeros, your child is not asking this model or this person that we think is on the other end. You're asking a statistical model to go find the most likely correct answer somewhere in a bunch of random data that we never know whether it's good or bad and come and tell the child who they are. The loudest voice in your child's life should not be a bunch of ones and zeros. It should be yours. And they need to understand that there are limitations and they need to be comfortable enough to be able to have those conversations with you. I think Pastor Harry and the other speakers did a very good job at establishing that basis. Number 3, curating the exposure that they have. I think we've now spoken through quite a lot of the potential use cases and around AI. But if you try to keep up with the number of apps that are coming out on the App Store on what AI can do, you'll be sitting for a very long time. A very, very long time. Part of this comes to wisdom. Understanding that maybe it's not a good idea that you're engaging with image-based models. Maybe it's not a good idea because that'll most likely lead you to uploading personal information, personal images that probably shouldn't be on the internet. Maybe it's not a good idea talking to these specific models because the way they're trained is not the best, right? And all of that stems from what? The very first thing, understanding the landscape for ourselves. Sometimes it's even just wisdom, asking someone who knows, what are some of the apps that my child should be using? Maybe let's confine it based on your age. Let's confine your apps to the educational apps, right? There's lots of forums that do a lot of good work in curating and consolidating good apps to use for different use cases, right? And it's just wisdom as a parent to know, hey, these are the things that you should engage with. And then like we've spoken about so many times on the digital pieces, understanding what they're doing. I mean, Pastor B always says if that your child has a phone and you don't know their password, then we have a problem, right? It's just wisdom. It's good parenting. Ensuring that we are aware of what they're doing, how they're engaging with this technology, and what information that they're giving it. And we have a certain say about that as well. And number 4, last but definitely not least, you have to protect their humanity. We have to protect their humanity. I think every single speaker has spoken about this point. The relationship, the connection. Do you know what happens when they don't have the relationship? When they lack the connection, when they lack the conversation, when they lack that sense of security, that person to talk to, what do? They go and talk to the AI because it's not going to judge them. It's not going to react. It's not going to respond negatively. It's not going to ground them. And this has made it extremely easy for our children to disengage. It has made it much easier for them to disconnect. Because now I don't even have to curate the information anymore. This thing just tells me. So end up asking very deep, dangerous questions. And this is where a lot of young people have been led to committing suicide. Because they took very deep, dark, negative thoughts to a machine that has no feeling, no heart, no spirit, and asked it, What do I do? And logically, because it's programmed to keep people engaged, it just keeps feeding whatever the person gives it. So if our children don't have a space that they find comfortable, a space that they find where there's trust, they're gonna go find it somewhere else. And this is not even a revolutionary concept. It's something we are well aware of. Is that if they don't find the peace in the home, if they don't find the comfort in the home, if they don't feel like they can speak to the person at home, what do? They go find someone else to speak to. They go to the internet, they go to their friends, they go to social media, try looking for that validation. So we need to protect the humanity for our children, create a safe space for them to come and have the conversations that should be had with us. We need to remind them that they're beautiful. I have 2 little girls, and I have to remind myself that. I have to tell them that you're beautiful, so that no one else takes the space of having to tell them that. So they don't feel like they have to go find that validation somewhere else. I have to give them the attention so that they know they're comfortable to come and talk to me about anything. And that's the environment we create as parents, so that our children feel safe enough to have those conversations. So this has not been, and I'm really hoping that it has not been, a session where I'm bashing AI. That's not what I'm trying to do here. As I've said before, there's a lot of value that AI is going to continue to introduce to the industry and the world at large. But with it comes the negative, and we need to be wise. The Bible says, my people perish because they what? They lack knowledge. Right? And this is what we're trying to do here. Bring the knowledge and say it has good and it has bad. It is our responsibility as parents to ensure that we're taking care of our kids and curating it for them, at least until they're at an age where they can make those decisions for themselves. So the key here isn't fear. We shouldn't fear it. We just need to apply what? Wisdom. We need to apply wisdom in how our kids are engaging with this technology and how we are engaging with this technology. Now, there's a lot more I can say in this topic, but that is it for now.